Good afternoon, Mark Johnson coming to you live from the putting green at Hillcrest Country Club. This is the East Putting Green. We're going to work today a little bit more on some putting techniques and tactics that I like to use. I think you'll find it very useful for you. Anyways, I think it's some really good stuff, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. Again, as always, we want to make sure that that everyone understands. If you have any questions or comments, send them on over. This is a live feed right now. We're happy to answer them on air currently. And then, as always, if you decide to watch this on the replay on the Hillcrest YouTube Boise channel, please log in, see the replay, and you can shoot us a text, email, or a phone call. We'd be happy to get you taken care of with any questions you have. So last Sunday, I kind of went the putter square. This was primarily talking about, from the golf ball forward, how we're coming into the golf ball and how we're allowing the blade of that putter to extend to, again, a forward square position through impact and then to the hole. Again, this is an attempt to keep that blade on line so our golf ball stays on line all the way to the hole. So today we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, I'm going to start off with how does that putter, when it squares up at impact, where does it come from? So we're going to talk about how to be square going back as well as coming into the golf ball. And then we're going to kind of get into a little bit of how I try to step into putts, how I view lag putts, how I view short putts, some of the tactics that I use around the putting green. And as you can see, the greens have been recently aerated. Practicing your putting, you don't have to have perfect greens. What you have to have is a really good mental approach to what you're trying to do and then execute it. So again, you have a strategy and you have a goal. The goal is our end result. We want to make sure that we hit good quality putts. We keep that faceplate square. Our strategy, how do we do that? So I'm going to start off today with that. So last week, we were solely focused on the squareness of that blade through impact, or as I mentioned last time, through the ball, right? So a lot of players, even some pros, are decelerators of the putter. So they don't swing the blade of the putter through the ball, they swing it to the ball. I think it's important to know, too, if we really want to get that blade to swing through the ball, we first got to know how to get it back and how to get it back properly and on line. So there's two schools on this process. The first school is to have, more of a rotational move as you take the putter blade back. So where that, you can see my hand, might be moving slightly inside as I pull it away. The second school of thought is for the blade to go more or less straight back. So as I do this, you can see my hand, it changes the loft of that blade very abruptly, right? So you can see it even better with a putter. So as I'm rotational, the blade opens up a little bit as I go inside and then comes back to square as I rotate it forward. If I go straight back and straight through, now you can see how the loft on that blade has changed quite a bit as it goes up and down. It's safe to say that there's been a lot of fine putters over the world that have adhered to that idea of taking the putter blade straight back and straight through. I would suggest to you that most of your better putters that have ever played the game have been more of a rotational approach with their backstroke. So that is the way that I teach putting. That is my thought process, and we're going to go from there. So interestingly enough, right before I came over here, one of our members asked me, or I asked him, I said, what ails you the most when it comes to your putting stroke? And he said, well, I'm not consistent with my stroke. And when he was showing me, his shoulders were going up and down like that. When his shoulders are moving up and down, we are actually creating that straight back, straight through approach. So we're de-lofting the blade as we go back, and now we're lofting it as we come through. So that's not going to give us the most consistent approach to putting. So the first thing to cover today is how to get our shoulders involved with the stroke. So if you watch my video on Sunday, you remember I talked about a couple of things that address. Number one, I want to have my thumbs pointed straight down the center of the shaft. Again, I really don't care what kind of grip you use as long as it's a neutral grip. It doesn't shut the blade down and doesn't open the blade up. And with that grip, we want our thumbs right down the center, and that's going to keep that blade as square as possible. If you also remember, I talked about having my elbows out. So if my elbows are in this fashion, aiming towards the camera, if there was an arrow here, it'd be pointing this way, as opposed to my elbows were in, they would be aiming at each other. So again, elbows out. And again, this is just an effort to keep that club face as square as we possibly can at address, okay? So now once I'm addressed properly, I have my thumbs down, I have my elbows out. Now I'm in a pretty good position of holding on to the putter. Let's talk about addressing real quick, okay? I gotta make sure that I got my weight more towards the balls of my feet. I'm not leaning back, okay? I'm keeping my spine angle relatively erect. I'm not slouching down. So my spine angle is erect. I'm leaning forward just a little bit. My weight's in the balls of my feet. Now I'm giving myself half a chance to make a decent putting stroke. I'm holding it correctly. The blade is square. I'm addressed correctly. My weight is proportioned correctly between both feet. I got about half my weight on my front, about half my weight on my back. So I'm just allowing my body to be in this nice, relaxed, comfortable position. So with this in mind, now my process switches. Now I think, okay, how am I going to pull it back? So my thought process goes from how do I address the golf ball to now how do I stroke the golf club? So once I'm addressed properly, I never think about that stuff again. It's done. I'm past it. Now I'm thinking about stroke. Okay? So if I get myself set in this position, I'm going to put the club right here in front of this alignment rod so you can see. I'm going to back just a hair. The middle specifically for, I use this one for. So I get my blade set right in front. So if I just now, once I'm addressed, if I just let my shoulders turn away, you can see how that blade naturally goes a little bit inside on the backstroke and then a little bit inside on the forward stroke. So it's coming in and then it's extending and coming in again. So if I do it over this alignment stick, you can easily see the blade of that putter goes inside, and as it extends through, it goes inside again, okay? Extended position through the golf ball. So my stroke is gonna be shoulders back, let that blade come inside. Now as I come through, I'm gonna extend. I'm gonna use the back of that left hand, and I'm gonna let that blade extend. The stroke is a little bit on the inside when you take it back, but when we go, it's all about getting that putter to release to the hole. So man, those are the drills we covered last Sunday. We're not abandoning those at all. We're using those to our ability. All we're doing is understanding how the stroke works coming off the golf ball on the takeaway. So to use a ball, I'm just going to start with some easy strokes. I'm going to keep my head, again, over that golf ball or slightly on the inside of that golf ball. When I take the blade back, I'm using my shoulders, okay? I'm not using my hands. I'm using my shoulders. This whole piece works together as one. I had a really good conversation with a touring pro one time, and he said, Mark, when you're putting, you're assuming the capital letter in the English language. Why? This is a capital letter Y. This is the stem of the Y. My arms are the two arms of the Y. And what we're doing is we're keeping that Y intact throughout the entire motion of the stroke. We're not allowing that Y to break down by using our hands. That Y stays together. So that's the feeling I want to have over this ball. I get set, I use my shoulders, and I keep my Y intact and through. And I just allow my shoulders to go through that stroke for me. I'm not thinking about trying to hold the putt. This putt that I'm going at here is probably about 15 feet. Remember I told you on Sunday, from 6 feet, the tour average is 70%. What is it for 15 feet? Not even close to 70%. So do I think I'm going to make this putt? I'm not trying to miss it, I'll tell you that much. But what I am doing is I'm going to make sure I give myself the best attempt. Do I really think I'm going to make it? Gosh, I sure hope so. Do I expect to make it? Absolutely not. So again, I get myself set. I get the blade square. Now again, I'm going to keep my Y intact back and through. And again, keep my head still, nice and easy. Y back, Y through. Now if I make it, fantastic. If I come super close to where it's a tap in, honestly, that's what I'm really happy with. If I can walk away from here without a 3-putt, that's a good thing. So again, have expectations that are real for yourself, okay? Holding a putt from 15 feet all the time, not a very real expectation. It's not a real expectation for a tour player, so why should it be for us, right? So give yourself some real expectations that you can hit and conquer. Okay, so just to recap, remember I'm using my shoulders, I'm getting set, and I'm allowing this Y to stay together back and through, but I'm extending that Y through to the target. So I keep my head still, and nice and patiently, I stroke that Y using my shoulders and allow the club to do all the work for me. All I'm doing is holding on, okay? So that same touring pro that gave me that tip, he also gave me some advice one day. He asked me how I played the night before, and I said, gosh, I played pretty good, but I certainly should have played a lot better. There was a lot of these, 5, 6, 7 foot putts that I should have made. And he said, listen, there is no shoulda. You shot when you shot. He said, understand that putting is one of the things in golf that we have the least amount of control with. As soon as that ball leaves the putter face, we have no control. That ball could hit a granule of sand. It could hit a tuft of grass on the green. It could hit a spike mark, someone's heel mark in the turf. Who knows any of 100 things that could account for the golf ball not going in the hole. So once you make the stroke, everything else is off the table. If it goes in, great. If it goes in, if it doesn't go in, great. All you have control about is your stroke. So take control of your stroke. That's it. Okay. So I hate to repeat myself, but this is really critical here. Get set. Let my shoulders stroke the club slightly inside. Let the blade extend through as we go forward. But more importantly, keep my Y intact as I swing the club back and through. Okay? All right. Let's talk about some tactics that I use on the putting green. Having a good stroke is pretty cool. It'll enable you to make a lot more putts. It will enable you to have a lot more confidence. Just make you a better player all around. It's no secret that we've talked about, over the last few sessions that the touring pros, they practice more here on the putting green than they do out on the driving range. So, you know, if you have a pretty decent stroke, you're going to get yourself around the golf course pretty well. So now, some other things that we need to consider when we're putting: how do we read greens? How do we read speed? How do we read grain into a green? Grain can affect not only speed, but it can also affect the break of the golf ball itself or the stroke. So we got to really make sure that we're on top of all this stuff when we read our putts. So, you know, I think it's hard to kind of convey through a video message how to really read greens, but I'm gonna give you real good insight, and then you can go and test it on your own. The best way to read greens is to have 3 views. So we always start with the view right behind the ball, right? Everyone does that. Ball's there. And we start by looking behind the golf ball, trying to get an idea of what way this putt is breaking, either left or right. We do our best. Now that's where most of us stop, right? We go out and we play our Saturday game and take one quick look from behind, and next thing you know, we're over the ball and we're putting it. It's not how touring pros do it. It's not how really good amateur golfers do it. It's not how club pros do it. They take their time, right? They give themselves every opportunity to understand what's really happening with their putt. So I take 3 views. My first view, as I just mentioned, is always directly behind the ball. The next one I'll take is a side view. I'm going to take in consideration the cup and my ball, and then the view of that terrain in between. So I'm going to look for a couple of very specific things. I'm looking for changes in height, changes in slope. So if one side of the green is higher than this side, then the ball is going to move a certain way. Vice versa as well. If this side is higher than this side, the ball is going to move a different way again. So we got to take into consideration all these slopes that affect the read of our putt. Now, 3 different views, someone will say, well, boy, that might just give me 3 different, thoughts on which way the putt's breaking altogether. It could. It most certainly could. And if that's the case, then you enter a 4th view. So I always go behind my original ball, side view. I usually do a low side view. And then from behind the cup back to the ball. And then if I'm still confused, then I take the 4th view, which is going to be another side view, but the high side view. And I'm going to get down low to the green. I'm going to get my knees real low to the green. I'm going to get my eyeballs real low to the green. And I'm going to take a look at that terrain and see what I can see. All those different views should give me a pretty good indication of how that ball is breaking. Once I have a pretty good indication of which way that ball is going to move, now I can determine from, again, behind my golf ball, how much break I want to play. And it can be anywhere from, a half of a golf ball to a number of feet, depending on how slopey that terrain is or how much break we think is there going to be in that putt. So give yourself this information. You need all the information you have to not only make a quality stroke, but to make a quality putt. I can tell you right now, excuse me, you can have the best stroke in the world, but if you're not reading the putt correctly, you're not going to make it. That's just a reality. And then even if you have the best stroke in the world and you've read it incredibly good, but you're off with your distance control, you're not going to make the putt. So all 3 of those factors have to come into play to make a quality putt. Good stroke, good read, and good distance control. Remember that the very first putting lesson we did, we talked about distance control. That's the very first thing we covered. We got to make sure, especially on a 15-foot putt, we're at least getting that golf ball to the hole. I want it to have a chance to go in. So those are your 3 keys for reading greens. I'm sorry, 3 views. Okay, now let's talk about grain. A lot of people don't even know what grain is. Grain is a description of how the blades of the grass are laying. Are they laying straight up? Are they laying towards you? Or are they laying away from you? I can tell you, I played here at Hillcrest for a number of years, and there's not a lot of grain here at Hillcrest, but there's enough that you got to understand it. So when I say there's not a lot of grain, if you go back in the East Coast, places like Florida or North Carolina, Georgia, you're going to see a lot of grain back there. Over here on this side of the states, there's not a ton of grain, but there's enough that we got to be aware of it because it will affect our putts. So generally speaking, how is grain created? Well, grain is created by the mow lines on the green. So if the mower goes this way, the tendency is those blades of grass are going to be laying down that way. Conversely, if the mower is going this way, those blades of grass are going to be laying this way. So if we're putting into blades of grass that are laying this way or away from us, that putt is going to be faster. And if that putt is faster, it's also going to utilize more what? More brake. If the putt's faster, it's going to be braking more. Conversely, if we're putting this way, but the grain is laying into us, now we're going to be creating friction when that golf ball rolls over that grain. So that's going to slow that putt down. So that means we can be, if we're into the grain, we can be a little bit more aggressive. So we got to hit it just a little bit harder because now we're putting into friction, okay? So if we're putting into friction and it's a slower putt in general, how would that affect the brake? Probably not going to brake quite as much, okay? So into the grain, putts fast and is going to brake more. Putting with the grain is going to be fast and braking more. If we're putting into the grain, it's going to be slower and braking less. So know what grain is, know how to look for it. Again, you're looking for those mow lines. Next time you come out to the putting green when they're not aerated, check out the mow lines. Get down close and see if you can determine which way those blades of grass are leaning. That grain is going to help you make more putts, I guarantee you. All right, last thing I want to cover today, I wanted to cover, how I view a cup. A cup is, that's the hole that we're trying to make it into. But people always ask me, when I've got like a 3, 4, 5 foot putt. Again, these are the putts that we got to know how to have control over. Remember from last Sunday, I said that 3 foot circle, that's my comfort zone. So I feel like I'm going to make most of my putts within that 3 foot circle. So how do I determine precisely the break on those putts? So picture the cup being like this. It's laying in the ground like this. Picture that being a clock face. So the 12 is up top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So when you're reading break, try to hit towards one of those numbers on the clock. If you think this putt's going to break, maybe a half a ball or a ball, play that to 1 o'clock. Or if it's the opposite breaking, play it to 11 o'clock, right? Or if you're more comfortable reading that clock from the bottom up, You know, again, if we're talking about a 1 ball out break or maybe a inch to an inch and a half break, now you're going to be playing to 5 o'clock, or maybe you're going to be playing to 7 o'clock. So make it easy for your mind to conceptualize what you're trying to do. It's really going to help you out. So on these 3-foot putts, if I see an inch of break, I'm playing to 1 o'clock, or I'm playing to 11 o'clock. If I see 2 inches of break, you know, maybe that's 2 o'clock, right? Or 10 o'clock. Make it easy for yourself. Understand what happens when you play to one side or another. What I'm kind of getting at is you have 2 types of putters. You have putters that putt with feel, or putters that are point putters. Personally, I'm a point putter. I see a point in which I think it's going to break, and I putt to that point. Feel putters don't really see that detail of a map on the green. They just kind of feel it, and they go, I'm going to aim about right here, and then just kind of do it. I like to be a little bit more precise. That's why I'm a point putter. But I think this stuff is really going to be useful for you. I tried to give a little bit of insight today as to how I approach putting, how I approach the putting stroke. You know, don't get too detail oriented with the stroke. Get yourself set. Get yourself holding the golf club properly. Get yourself addressing the golf ball properly. And then once you're at that point, move away to the stroke. And again, make it simple, right? Use that Y theory, back and through. So that Y goes inside going back and extends forward going through. It's pretty simple. If you make it too hard on yourself, golf's not going to be a simple game. So that's kind of the stroke, how I look at it, how I step into each putting stroke. And then I move on. I look into, where is that ball breaking? How do I read break? How do I get myself comfortable with what I feel the golf ball is doing? And then lastly, how to read grain and what grain does to affect the putt. How does it affect my putt? Does it slow it down? Does it speed it up? Does it make it break more? Does it make it break less? And then lastly, as I get into those shorter putts, remember I'm a point putter, so I kind of see a detailed map on the putting green, and I go for the specific portions of that clock face around the cup to give me a better idea of how that putt's going to break. So I hope I was helpful for you today. As always, any questions or comments, send them over to us, call them in. We're happy to help. We'll get you taken care of. I hope everybody's staying safe. Hope everyone's staying sane. And hope everything we talked about today made you a better putter. Goodbye for now.